Right, we sorted our handbags out.
Bag lady.
Hello everyone. I think a lot of you might already be aware that it's 30 years ago, almost to the day, that we saw the beginning of one of the most important industrial actions in trade union history in this country. The news of proposed closures of pits led to a miners' strike. And the year that miners' strike went on saw incredibly bitter clashes. It saw incredible hardship among the communities of mining families. And what was remarkable that came out of it and was unexpected was what happened with the women. Because the women didn't stay in their houses, they didn't stay in the kitchen, they found a voice. For the first time for many of them, they came out and they found they actually had some political say, but they also had the ability to sustain their families beyond the four walls of their homes. I was there as a BBC correspondent covering it for the radio, and I had a weird situation in that I would go from covering the picket lines and being shaken up by both sides, because nobody was very fond of journalists, to buying food to take to my sister, who was married to a Barnsley miner, and they were starving, and she was having to steal potatoes from the local fields and things like that. So, I mean, I had a very odd perspective, and so I actually was very interested in the women and did quite a lot of stories about the women and the families and how they struggled. And I came across these remarkable people, two of whom are with me today, and I'm so excited that they've come down from Barnsley to share their stories with you. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves. So first of all, over to you, Betty.
Hi, I'm Betty Cook, a Women Against Pit Closures, obviously. Before the strike, I worked full-time. Knowing the strike was coming along and being aware that it would be a long one, I moved to part-time work so that I would be able to be more active within the strike. Because during 72 and 74 strikes, my ex-husband now was a flying picket, and I was left at home with the children, and we were cold and we were hungry, and I cried most of the time. So 8 to 4, I'm not going to cry anymore. I'm going to get on my feet and I'm going to do something about it.
Anne Scargill, Women Against Pit Closures. Before the strike, I weren't really political. Obviously, I was married to a political man, but I loved 60s music, 50s music, and my father was very, very political. But I just sauntered on. I worked at the co-op. I got a daughter. And then when the strike started, some women from Northern College came and asked me if I would join them, because obviously with the way that Thatcher was, and a lot of our women voted for Thatcher, we all probably knew that it was going to be a long, long strike.
It was an incredible time. Now, what's amazing is Anne and Betty are still campaigning. They're the scourge of modern picket lines, but we'll talk about that a bit more. I'd like to just take us back to the life in the coalfields at the time of the strike and the build-up to it. I mean, both Anne and Betty come from that area, and you will have read about things, but it's actually really nice to cut out the journalism and to hear from the real deal, from the people who were really, really there. So Betty, to you first, can you describe what the communities were like at the time the strike kicked off?
Yeah, before the strike started, we were a close-knit community. We were a small mining community. Most of the men worked at the mine, and they worked together, they socialised together. The women shopped in the little local shop together. But it was very male chauvinist society at that time. And as a woman, I find that even the other women judge me, not as a person, but they always address me as so-and-so's wife or so-and-so's mother. They judge you because we love our white net curtains, we still do. They judged you how white your washing was on the line. Because we were an isolated community, we had mobile shops and mobile butcher, and they also judged you on what you bought to feed your family on. But besides that, we were close-knit and we pleased our own community. Because we were so close, if children were doing something that they shouldn't have done, it was a case of stop that now or I'll go and tell your mum or your dad. And we've lost all that now. We've lost that sense of community. My Donny, my second son, worked at Woolly Colliery. Woolly Colliery closed. He went to the Selby coalfield. They moved to Selby. And he said, Mum, I don't even know my next door neighbours. I don't know where they work. I don't know the children. And he'd really lost that sense of community. And so that's what we were like. We cared for each other, although there was a lot of, she's not a very good mother or she's not a very good wife. But besides that, we were a close community and we lived and we worked and we socialised together.
Did you find that, Anne, that obviously it's a very tight community, but it wasn't an easy life, was it?
No, it wasn't an easy life. I mean, people in our community, they were really, really male chauvinists, and you had to have their dinner on the table when they came in. And if it wasn't there, they weren't very happy. And some of the women from our community never went out without their husbands. The husband was always there taking them out, and they probably only went out Saturday and Sunday. And obviously, I just lived on the edge of the community, and I did work all my life. So I used to see people and talk to people, but I weren't really into community. I just lived on the edge of it. So I really was probably a bit privileged.
And believe it or not, both these women would say they were shy at the time. That changed during that year, didn't it?
Yeah.
What was the sort of point when you realised that you actually had to take action, that something had to happen here?
I had to take action well before the miners' strike. We lived in a little old pit house in a very isolated community, and they built what they called a new washer down at the quarry, which used loads and loads of water to wash the coal. And the agreement was that they didn't use the washery during the day. They ran it at a night time, because if they ran it during the day, we'd no water supply. Well, the quarry totally ignored that, and so we'd no water supply. And I used to have to put 2 babies in the pram, walk about 2 miles down to the village to my friends, to take bottles down, to bring water back, to make babies' bottles and feed the children, and try and keep them clean. And beside the heartache and the upset, there was still a bit of laughter, because we were close-knit, and somebody would say, one of the women would say, I've got a kettle of water, who wants a cup of tea? And then we'd say, but we've no clean cups, we haven't washed up. I've got a bowl, that's all right. And she'd pour the tea into the bowl and we'd pass it round. But then, I thought, I can't cope with this. The quarry wouldn't do anything. At that time, I didn't know who to go to. And so I put the children in the pushchair and I went to Wakefield to social services. And I marched in the office and I said, you better look after these kids because I can't. And they need a bath and they need feeding, And they said, but you can't do that. And I said, but I've got to do. I've nothing else that I can do. So after a discussion, they said, if you promise us that you'll go home and take the children, we'll promise you do something about the water situation. And so I got this guy steaming up from the quarry. Who's the bloody woman who complained about the water? It's me, and you better do something about it. And then the house got on fire, because we used to use what we call set pots, and they were like a big iron cauldron with a little fire underneath. And wash day, we used to have to put cold water in, light a fire, and it used to heat the water. But apparently when they built the houses, the beams upstairs went across the chimney. And every day when my next door neighbour washed, we had to go out because the house filled with smoke. But one particular day, the children came running in the bedroom and they were dancing up and down on the floor, saying, "Mummy, the floor's very hot, the floor's very hot." And the house was on fire. So I got my ex-husband out of bed and said, "You better go get the fire brigade." And the fire brigade came and said, "You know, we've got to do this and we've got to do that." And I said, "You better go down to the pit and tell them, because they'll not believe me." And so they went down and they said, "You've got to sort this out." And the guy came and the fire brigade had to saw floorboards up to get to the seat of the fire. And he said, "I'll tell you what, love, get your husband to get a hammer and a few nails." I said, "We ain't got none." He said, "But these floorboards need putting back." I said, "Yeah, you better do it." You know, and so that did push me into agitating, but then I went back to my old self. You know, the house didn't get on fire anymore and I'd got a water supply, but then I got mice, and the old people that had lived there for years said, "Don't worry, because if you've got mice, you ain't got rats." Brilliant. So we got rid of the mice. And the children were in the house and I'd been washing the kitchen, and I went in to see to them, and there was this huge rat on my windowsill scratching, trying to get in. So then that was my next campaign, by threatening the council that unless they got rid of these rats, anything my children got, whether it was a cold, a cough or whatever, would be put down to a rat infestation, and I would go to the press. So again, I went back into my old shell, but I did do some agitating before the strike, but that was because they were my kids and I loved them.
Well, both Betty and Anne were founder members of Women Against Pit Closures, which still exists today. And what was the story that led up to the establishing of Women Against? Because obviously your house would have been full of politics with your father, and then obviously with your husband, your ex-husband. So it must have been something you were very, very acutely aware of.
Well, yeah, yes, it was. And how I got involved with Women Against Pit Closures, and Betty, who I met, and we've been together 30 years now.
Yeah, they actually met through WAPC.
We met through Women Against Pit Closures. I worked at the co-op and just lived in my own little world, and obviously I used to read in papers about ethnic people and getting pulled out of cars and police locking them up. And I used to think, well, they must have done something for that to happen to them. I don't believe that's happened. And things like that. Anyway, this particular night I was going out somewhere, and 3 women came to see me. They were from the Northern College, and they said, "Anne, we're going to start a movement. We want to know if you'll come to a meeting, because obviously it's going to be a long strike." And Thatcher started then and said she wouldn't feed the young kids, and she said, "We're going to start this Women Against Pit Closures movement, and if you'd like to come to this meeting, we'll explain what we're going to do, and then we can all get organised." And it was these 3 women from Northern College. So I goes along to this meeting, and this is where I met Betty. And they decided at this meeting that a lot of our miners, young lads that were going on picket lines, were getting arrested. They were saying that they couldn't go anymore to these pits to picket. So the women used to meet every Sunday, and they said, well, if these pickets can't go and men can't go, we can go. They can't sack us. We'll go. So we started then, and it started that got a minibus and started going on picket lines. And then we started organising rallies. And the first big rally we had was in Barnsley. And they organised this rally, and we thought, oh, I wonder how many will come. Anyway, police came. We said, oh, there'll not be so many. So we walked down Market Hill. Well, there were buses coming from all over. They didn't know where to put them. Police in Little Barnsley, buses coming from Wales, all over. We couldn't believe it. And inspectors going mad. I thought you said there'd only be a few. We said we thought there'd only be a few. Never mind you. So anyway, we set off and marched, and Arthur spoke at this rally, and we had it in the Civic Hall, which is a really big hall in Barnsley. So we walk in, and we all had our banners, and this was the first rally. Walked down Market Hill, turned the corner, and there's the police lining up outside the Civic Hall, and with their white banners like this. It says, "You're not coming in there with them." And we said, "You are? You're not coming in there with them?" So he says, "We are. Get out at road." And we shoved him out at road, and we all went in with all our banners. And I can tell you something, it was a wonderful, wonderful meeting and a wonderful sight to stand at the front of the hall and see all the women with banners marching and coming into the hall, and the police were going balmy. Anyway, that was our first. So after that, we decided to go on a picket. And we thought, right. So we set off, and there were 10 of us in this minibus. And Betty were only saw start to cry. We could tell her to cry, and she could cry like that. So we go.
Handy skill.
When we got in, a bit of a fracas with police and minibus, where you going? Anyway, we went, and we got lost us this morning in this minibus. And it was the first picket, and quite a few were our women, young women, never been on a picket line before. They were apprehensive, but they went, and we met up with 4 more women who came from Nottinghamshire. And we'd lost the other picket buses that went, I don't know. We were supposed to go into a... Anyway, we pulled in at this service station thing, and we met these 4 women from Nottinghamshire, and they said, "We're going to Silver Hill this morning." We said, "Yeah, but we're really looking for another..." They said, "Oh, come to Silver Hill with us." So we set off in minibus, followed them to Silver Hill, went to this pit. It's called Silver Hill, and there were no police. There were only 4 or 5 police there, and we thought, oh. So we went right up to pit gates, and there's these 4 or 5 police, not many at all. Anyway, we started picketing and singing and shouting, and men were coming into work and we're shouting, "Scab, scab, scab." And a couple of them threw the sandwiches to us and went back. And we looked, we says, "Oh, this is only jam." I think... And I think other one were potting meat. So we said, "Oh, they're not right well off." I don't know if we expected caviar or what. Anyway, we had this picket this morning, and then the man went down, and some of them said that this man had been exposing himself, but I never saw it.
Shame.
I missed that, yeah. So anyway, we're coming away, and I'd driven picket bus. And 2 women got arrested, and why they got arrested, I don't know, but in the meantime, while we were there, we didn't know these policemen that were there had sent for reinforcements, and 2 buses filled with police came, and they got out of the buses and put these chin straps on, which after that we realised that when they put the chin straps on, they were going to come and use violence on us. Yeah, we didn't know them, but we thought, what they come for, Punch? Anyway, they shoved us about quite a lot, and then they picked these 2 women up and took them away. Anyway, one of our ladies who just had a baby, she weren't right old, her baby, Lynn, they picked her up as well, just at random. So I went to inspect her, who I'd been talking to before, because he said there was some, even in Somerset Police, and I told them they made better cider than they did cops. And it spoke back to me, but he weren't right friendly. And so I said, "Excuse me," I says, "I don't think I'm being rude." I says, "What you arrested those 3 for?" He says, "Get her as well." So I finished up Vicky in bus, getting arrested, and I threw my keys to lasses. And I says, "Here," I says, "there's keys for car." and I finished up in bus. Anyway, they took us to police station, and I shall never ever forget what happened to me as long as I live. It took all four of us to police station, and they put us in a dog compound, and it were raining, and the dog compound were full of dog muck. Yeah, and they kept us in there for about half an hour, and then I wanted to go to the toilet, so I started to kick the bottom of the cell door, and this policewoman came. She says, will you tell me what they call you? I says, no, I'm not telling you what they call me until you tell me what I've done wrong. I says, because I ain't done no wrong. I says, you tell me what they call, what I've done wrong, and I'll tell you what they call me. Anyway, she took me in this bathroom, and there were a form and a bath, and she come in and shut door, not big, and she said to me, come on, get undressed. I says, you what? Just get undressed. I says, I'm not mucky, I got bath this morning. She says, I've said get undressed. I says, what for? She says, I'm looking for offensive weapons and drugs. She says, you what? I says, do you know I'm old enough to be your mother? She says, I'm only doing my job. I says, yeah, that's what they said in Nazi Germany when they were taking Jews to be slaughtered. They're only doing the job. She says, come on. So, to take all my clothes off, she strip searched me. And I put all my clothes back on. And she won't give me my shoes back. I says, I'm not moving out in here while I get my shoes. I says, it's filthy in here. Anyway, she took my laces out, I don't know why, and gave me my shoes back. And I went out of there. And she did the same to all other 3 girls that were arrested that morning. And I'll never ever forget that, or forgive the police for doing that to me. And I just thought, them poor women in Ireland, and them that I thought that were pulled out of cars and that. And here we have foreigners done nothing this morning. Probably we were cheeky, no violence at all. And we finished up in here and they've done that to us. Anyway, I just thought and thought, and I thought, well, they mustn't think that they're going to intimidate me. In fact, they made me worse. Because after that, I thought, I don't care what I do now. They can't do anything any worse than that to me. So, but a couple of women who went that morning, Anne Musgrave and some more, they were petrified. They never went anymore, did they, Betty? No.
It must have changed how you saw the police. Dramatic. It must have changed how you saw the police.
It didn't, not half.
Yeah.
I hated them.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you. And even now, if I see a policeman, I can tell you, and my daughter will say, oh, mother, they weren't even born when strike started and things like that. I'll say, yeah, but Margaret, they didn't do to you what they did to me. It's that uniform. I can't cope with it.
There was a particular kind of violence, wasn't there? I witnessed it myself.
There were a lot of violence. They used to get us in a group, and then they'd take 2 police out, and then 2 more, and 2 more. And you couldn't breathe. Yeah, I think they got a kick out of it. Because we said to one of them, do you hit your wife? He says, I don't. I says, well, startlingly, I was alone. But, you see, I'm convinced that them policemen got a kick out of having a go at the women.
Well, you had your own clashes, didn't you, Betty? You had a broken bone, didn't you?
Oh, yes, yeah. I think the police tolerated me until February 85, and we had by then got our own scabs at Woolly Colliery, and we'd got a little caravan. Somebody lent us a little caravan because we decided we'd do soap for the pickets. And when we first started, we just used to do it on a wall outside a house, but then we had this little caravan. and they used to bring the dogs right up to the caravan, and the dogs used to have the heads on the counter and used to be snarling and growling at us. And I used to say, you can bring your dogs, you can bring your horses, we'll be back. And we'd been to Greenham Common, obviously, during the strike, joined with the Greenham women, and their song inspired me, we'll be back time and time again. And so this is what we said to the police. But on this particular morning, it was a very heavy picket. Barnsley Trades Council had come to support us, and everything was just whirly mad. And we'd got a photographer with us from London, and there were 4 women that worked as photographers in London and came up to the strike and each taken a different area to take photographs. And it was the first morning she'd ever met us. Well, during all the melee, my kneecap got hit with a truncheon, and he just said to me, that serves you right, you silly old get. And I just looked at him and I said, silly old get. I said, I'll be back here tomorrow, I'll show you. And so the photographer said to me, come on, we must get you to hospital. And I said, we haven't got time. We'd got a woman who'd actually been in prison, and she was coming up in court in Nottingham that morning, and we'd promised to go and support her in court. So one of my friends had some butterfly stitches. I said, I'll butterfly it and pad it, and off we go. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it got to lunchtime, and I knew now the time I've got to do something. So I said to Rai, we're going to have to go back right now. And she said, right, we'll call at the first hospital we come to. I said, you won't, we're in bloody knots, they'll cut my leg off. So I said, we'll go to Barnsley. So we went back to Barnsley. The sister from A&E came out, because obviously Rai had to get a wheelchair. I couldn't walk by that time. And this sister was an amateur photographer and considering giving up a career in nursing and all she was bothered about was Rai and her cameras and all this, and there's me sat there with my Lego. Anyway, eventually the guy came and he said, we've got to admit you because it needs surgery. And I said, I haven't got time. Just pot it up and I'll be fine. So that's what happened, and Rai had never met my ex-husband and had to go in and say, you have to come and lift her out the car, she's got a broken kneecap. And he lifted me out the car, dumped me on the settee and went off to the pub. And that was it. That's why he's the ex.
I love, there's a story that Betty told me in relation to that. I was talking to her years ago about the broken leg. She said, oh, never mind the broken leg. She said, I had this pair of lovely red boots and I ruined them in the picket lines.
She was more 30 bob boots.
30 bob boots, yeah. So here we are all these years on, and Women Against Picket Closures is still going strong. Both Anne and Betty are called in to, as we say, to go and visit picket lines for different unions these days. I just wanted to get a feel for what relevance you think there is for today, and then we'll get on to questions from you guys. And what can WAPC do for communities now? What does it do?
Well, obviously, we had quite a lot to do, and Betty and I are still active. I work with the homeless. I've been there for 6 years, and in our community's died, and we've got kids in our community whose parents have never had a job, and they've not even a chance of getting a job, and it's sad, because there's plenty of talent in our community, but it's just wasted. And so I went to 6 years ago, I go to church, and they started a drop-in, because we had quite a few people in Barnsley who had nowhere to sleep and were living rough. And we used to get about 47, 48, and we did it in this church hall and made them a breakfast on a Monday. On a Wednesday they had a lunch, and on a Friday they had a lunch. And obviously got a bag of food. And one day I said to this young lad, I said, hey, I said, I've got some tin soup here. Do you want it? And do you know, it really pulled at my heartstrings. He says, Anne, I ain't got an oven and a fire. I've got nothing. And it really, really upset me that. Anyway, now 5 years on, I'm still doing the same. But it's a shame really, because last week we had 111 come to our soup kitchen. So obviously it's getting worse. And we ain't only got soup kitchens in Barnsley now. We've got food banks. And we ain't just got one, we've got about 6 or 7. And then Betty's been telling me today that Salvation Army have set up clothes banks. So this is it, 30 years on from the miners' strike. We're going backwards. Food banks, clothes banks, and drop-ins. And there's not only one drop-in, there's 3 or 4. I mean, we ain't got a departmental store in Barnsley. Barnsley's dead. And I look round my village when I go home and look out of my door and think, well, at least I did try to prevent this happening to our village. It's sad, you know, when there's all this money in the world and then we've got a zone there in our village, and one of the worst villages round us is Coalthorpe. And in Coalthorpe, when Thatcher died, they decided to have a funeral for her in Coalthorpe. They got a cart and a black horse, and they put a plume on it. They got the coffin. You know how she had her hair all wisped up? She's laid in coffin there with her nose and all wisped up, and we set off from outside the local club, paraded her through Goldthorpe, right round to the back of the other club where the pit used to be, and there's all derelict houses all down the side. Still there 30 years on, all these derelict houses. And we burnt her. We cremated her. Then we all danced on her ashes. And
It's a popular thing to do, isn't
yeah. And the press came to me and said to me, "It's disgusting." I said, "What?" They said, "An old woman like Mrs. Thatcher, done so much. Could you not have, what you done this for today?" He says, "I don't agree with it, do you?" I says, "You what?" I says, "I do." I says, "Look what she's done to this community. Decimated it." I says, "Nothing, they've got nothing." I says, "I'll tell you something." I says, "And it's just cost them 10 million in London to bury her." I says, "We've buried her and dances on ashes for £179. And they come, you know.
But Betty, I just wanted to ask you, are you finding that young women are interested in women against pit closures still, or now?
We're trying very difficult. It's a difficult task now to bring young women into the struggle, but we're trying so hard because we aren't going to be here forever. And so we've got to keep that movement still going. But yesterday, we had a function in Barnsley at the NUM. It was a celebration of 30 years of the strike, but it was also International Women's Day. So it was our organisation, and the NUM provided the building and helped us with it. And it was amazing because not only did we have old miners and women that had been involved in the movement, but they brought the young ones along, young people as well. And so we could make links and we could say, you know, we're going to have a meeting, you must come along and join us. And it's so important, you know. And Anne and I have got international links. And last year we went to the American Women Miners Reunion Conference because they used to invite us to go. They used to come and support us in our strike, and we used to go over there. And they said, we now considered ourselves as daughters of Mother Jones, because Mother Jones, as you know, was classed as the most dangerous woman in America. So obviously we're now part of daughters of Mother Jones. And we've been invited to go to Cork in August or July and speak at the Mother Jones Festival, which is, it's so wonderful that we've still got these contacts. And we were at a conference a couple of years ago, and there was a lady there from a country that I'd never heard of. I'm still not educated, I'm afraid. But she was there as a guest, and she stood up and said what an inspiration Women Against Pit Closures had been to women in her country. It was so touching. And Anne and I continue to fight, and I will continue to fight. When we had our second round of pit closures, 92, 93, we had a pit camp in the Grimethorpe pit yard, and GMTV came to do an interview, and they were asking me what my opinion was when they would privatise coal mines. And I said, the most important thing will be health and safety, because it will be profit before people, and we will see more accidents and more deaths in our coal mines, never thinking that that would come home to me. 6 years ago, my Donny was killed at Kelly Colliery, but I'm so proud of him, and I'll still carry on because that's what he would wanted me to do. And I said yesterday, when we were there speaking and we were still full of fight and everything, he used to ring me up often and say, "Oh, Mother, what have you done now? Oh, Mother, what are you going to do next?" And I could see him up there yesterday saying, "Oh, Mother, what are you doing now?" You know? And so it's still, the movement is still so valuable to me, and I will still carry on. And they can do what they want. They can bring the dogs and the horses, and we'll be there, and we'll be there time and time again.
Oh yeah, just briefly, then we'll do questions.
No. When we had our pit camp at Grimethorpe, and it was a bit flat, things weren't happening, we had a meeting, and we decided we'd occupy a pit. We'd go down and occupy a pit. So we tried to get down Grimethorpe, but we didn't succeed. Anyway, they said that at Parkside in Lancashire, the mine was closed, but they were taking people on trips down it, this mine. So we said, "Oh, that's good. Shall we go on one and not come back up?" So anyway, we went, and it was Easter, Holy Thursday, and two women, me and Elaine Evans from the pit camp at Grimethorpe, and Doc Kelly and Leslie Lomas from Parkside Colliery in Lancashire, went and put our names on a list to go down this mine and have a look around the mine to see how it worked. So we set off from Barnsley, and I dyed my hair dark. And I'm waiting for Elaine in Barnsley, and she went past me. I says, "Elaine." She says, "Oh, Christ, what you done?" She says, "Well, I've done my hair." She says, "Plummet." She says, "Oh, they'll not know you, because I didn't." And we set off, and we went and picked Dot up and Leslie, and we drove, and we went into the mine. And there were about 8 more people going down. It was a party of 12. And I think my only regret is that one of our ladies didn't go down with us and come out, because we didn't know what happened when we stopped down. So anyway, we goes round the mine, and Elaine says, "Can I take some paper and write things down?" "Oh, yeah." And Leslie was a very, very pretty girl, a lot younger than us. Anyway, we goes down and round, and then it comes to time for to come out, went on the face, and we're in the pit paddy, coming out to come out. And there were Dot there, me here, Leslie here, and under manager there. And Leslie leaned across to me, and she said, "This man's sitting out too close to me." I says, "Grin and bear it and get water off him." Because he got water. So anyway, I said, "I'll not be laughing in a bit." So anyway, we gets to pit bottom, and we gets out of there. No men are waiting to come out at pit, no visitors. The 12 of us are there, and they shout, come on, stand back. Let the visitors out first. Come on. So they all went to the front, and one of the lads at back recognised it, and then he says, "Madam, what are you doing down here?" I says, "Shh, we're occupying pit." He says, "You what?" I says, "Aye." And he laughed. So anyway, he come to us, under manager, and I says to Leslie, "Did you get that water?" She says, "Yeah." I says, "Oh." He says, "Come on now, come on." I says, "Well, I might as well tell you. We're Women Against Pit Closure. And we're occupying your pit." He says, "Come on now." I says, "You don't believe me, do you?" I says, "Well, we're not coming out." He says, "You are, if I've got to drag you out." I says, "Well, Michael Mansfield, my barrister, says..."
As you do.
And he did. I asked him before we came down. I rang him up and asked him. I says, "Michael," I says, "we're going to occupy a pit." I says, he says, "No," he says, "only police can fetch you out on." He says, "Don't worry about it." I says, "Well, we're going to do it." And I think he was the only one who knew that we were going to occupy this pit because we tried before and got caught. So anyway, I says, "Michael Mansfield, my QC says, only the police can fetch me out of here. And if you start dragging us about, we can do you for sexual assault." Well, he was in a right quandary. He didn't know what to do, so he goes, gets all them up, takes all men up, and leaves 2 men with us 4. Well, we didn't know what the hell to do. We were sat at bottom of cage, and it were cold. So anyway, they sent this man down to us, a young lad that were going to straighten us out. He'd bring us back up. He knew he would. Told him. So he comes down on cage, and I were cold, and he's talking to them. And he says, "Right," he says, "you can't go to the toilet and you can't go to sleep." I says, "You what?" He says, "No, you can't go to the toilet and you can't go to sleep." Dot says, "You're too late, my shoes as clean, I've been to the toilet." So, that did it. Anyway, we were sat in pit bottom, and I were cold, me, and I were tired. So I got wrapped up with dirt, and I'm just laid there. And he come and kicked me under my feet. And I got up, and I ran after him, over at railway lines, and I says to them 3, I says, "Come on, we're going to run amok in this pit." And they says, "Where we going?" I says, "Come on." And I run, and we went round the corner, and we found a little hut. And it was lovely, where they used to deploy men from. And I says, "Hey, look what's here." Anyway, we cleaned it up with cardboard inside and tidied it up. And then we found some wood, and we went in there. And it was lovely. And we were there, and we put some wood across and spragged it so they couldn't come in at door. And they were only us in there, and we were all giggling and laughing. Anyway, next morning, manager come, Mr. Ramsey. He knocked on the door. It's really funny. And we said, "Oh, is it?" He says, "Mr. Ramsey, I'm pleased to meet you." Elaine says, "You're a liar, you're not pleased to meet her." She says, "We're occupying your pit." He says, "Yeah, come on." He says, "There's all television at top, you've got all publicity you want. Come on out with me now." She says, "You don't know, we're not coming." Anyway, I says, "Open the door, let him come in." So they took wood away, and he came in, and he's looking at us. He says, he says, "I should be going away with my wife and daughter." I says, "Well, go on, we'll still be here when you come back." He says, "Well, how long are you counting on staying here?" So Elaine says, "How long did Terry Waite do? Do you think we can break Do you think we can break that?" Well, he was getting madder and madder with us. Anyway, he said, "Look," he said, you come on up with me now." He says, "We're waiting on you." I says, "You don't realise we're not coming." He says, "Well, you're getting nothing to eat or drink." So I says, "Well, that don't matter." I says, "Looking at us," I says, "except for Leslie," I says, "we could do with losing a bit of weight." I says, "And when you go to health arms, they only give you water." He says, "You're not getting no water." I says, "Well, we'll have to report you to Court of Human Rights." And angry. And anyway, he went. So there were always two men, a deputy and a management man, outside watching us all the time, what we did. And he went away. So as he got outside, he's talking to them and saying, "What do you think? What's morale like?" And we all started laughing. He says, "We don't answer back to me." Does it? And we stayed down 5 days. And we played. I'll just finish up in like 2 minutes. We played I Spy. And Leslie said, "Something beginning with D." Well, do you know it took us 24 hours to get it? She won't let us, and it were Debris. And Maxine Peake, I don't know if you know Maxine, who was she wrote a play about us.
Yeah.
And she's trying to get it on stage. And she came and interviewed all the four of us. The tragic thing was, on the Saturday, as the play was coming out on the Wednesday, Leslie, the youngest of us, died. And it was really tragic, yeah. But we did dedicate it to Leslie Lomas. Pardon?
Yeah, Maxine plays Anne Scargill, yeah.
Yeah, she played. Yeah, it was funny really because we were all in our house and she got all four of us together and Betty was there and we all talked about it. I don't know how she got all that jumbling up because we'd remember something about that and remember something about that. And when we went out to the toilet, we used to say we're taking dog a walk. I'm going to take dog out, I'll only be 2 minutes. And we went to anyway. One of the men who were very sympathetic to us, he put us a light up. Yeah, he put us a light inside because we'd only got our pit lamps and it were dark, so we'd got to save them for when, we thought when all lights have gone out of pit lamps, because they only last so long, we thought that they're going to, we'll have no light at all.